Jake Crain of Crain and Company. Jake, tell me, how patient do you think that both the administration, so the school, and the fan base will be with Hugh Freeze overall? Just with everything that goes on in college football and the impatience that most fans typically have. What's the patience level there?
Well, I think it used to be you had 3 cycles, right? But before this transfer portal madness and stuff, you had 3 cycles, 3 recruiting classes, 3 signing days to be able to implement not only better talent on your team, but your culture, right? And that's a word that gets thrown around a lot, but it's a real thing. I do think circumstances dictate that Hugh Freeze gets 3 years still, even though it has kind of been sped up to 2, like I mentioned. A lot of it is how much progress are you showing in what Auburn fans, and I've called this year the bridge year, right? To finally get the roster leveled up to a point where Auburn truly can go toe-to-toe with the best teams they're going to play, and it still probably isn't going to be there, which is, you hear Project 2025 a lot. Well, Auburn's got a Project 2025, and it's trying to get the roster as loaded as possible. So I think if you can't have another New Mexico State, right? You only get one hall pass. And listen, I mean, New Mexico State won 9 games last year, but it's still New Mexico State. You need to show progress. And again, it goes back to that one missing ingredient, right, in the recipe. And that's winning at least 7 games. Auburn hadn't had a winning season the last 3 years, TJ. Like, think about that. So it's not like you got to go out here and move mountains. I mean, you go win 8 games. People will feel really good. You go win 9 games, they're going to start carving that statue of you because you did it so quick. And I would say that because Auburn is so aligned, maybe that leash is a little bit longer, but anything less than 7 wins, it's we know the expectations at high-level places, and I consider Auburn one of those when you look at the amount of money that they pay out and the success that they've had in the past outside of these past couple of years. So I think the leash will follow the progress like it always does, but anything 7 or over, I would feel very good if I was Hugh Freeze.
Yeah, trending in the right direction for sure. And then that's when you take in year 3. You just can't go backwards. Like we saw in UF. That's why there's so much heat on.
Yeah,
on
and
UF,
then year 3 you get
6 and then
Georgia,
5.
Bama at home.
Yeah.
So it kind of rolls over.
So NIL and recruiting seem like they're there. I mean, Hugh Freeze has always been, an excellent recruiter no matter what was needed. But certainly in the NIL era and with Auburn's resources, they seem like they're there. And you talked about this on another show, but at the end of the day, it is truly just the results on the field. The alignment's there, the recruiting, the NIL seems to be there. What is the biggest obstacle right now? Is it just being in the SEC? I won't answer for you, but what is the biggest obstacle to getting there? Or is it just truly the time that it takes to rebuild?
Well, I always say it's typically a combination of things.
Sure.
Right? Auburn has had Georgia and Alabama have always been Auburn's rivals. Georgia and Alabama have typically always been pretty good. I know Georgia didn't go on this historical run like they've gone on since 1980, and Bama getting Nick Saban, we all know. I mean, even Mike Shula was winning games before that, if we're going to be honest. But I think the biggest obstacle is, the combination of being in the Southeastern Conference, having those rivals, and maintaining the level of expectation and the standard to the point where you can compete against those teams. What do I mean by that? Some people say, oh, well, you win 7 games or win 8 games, that's great. We'll be happy. That's all we want. Well, if you look at it that way, if you're Auburn, you're never going to be able to compete with Alabama and Georgia, especially right now. The minute you lower the standard or the expectation, as fanatical or as off base or as too hyped up as it can possibly be, the minute you lower yourself and you say, you know what, we're not as good as Alabama or Georgia. Whatever we do, we're not going to be able to be as good as them. Then you've truly lost. Because one of the reasons Auburn has been able to compete, at least in the past, and be kind of a thorn in Nick Saban's side, or be able to compete against Georgia, is that Auburn has convinced themselves that they are as big as Georgia and Alabama, right? It's like I call it the Steve Nash effect. You may not be 6'7", but that doesn't mean your ass can't go out there and play good. Yeah. Like it is what it is. You are what you believe you are. So I will say, I think every fan base has their lunatic part, right? But Auburn fans truly believe they deserve to walk on the same side of the street as Alabama and Georgia fans do. And the minute that gets watered down or lost, Auburn will truly be screwed for the long term.
So I'm not going to clip this or try and get you to jump into something. And I'm not saying that the wheels just fall off with DeBoer, but how much could Saban leaving really help impact and help Auburn just in general?
Well, I mean, if they'd have killed the Emperor, the Death Star probably would have blown up a lot quicker if they'd have just taken him out first. I mean, again, and Kalen DeBoer's an amazing coach.
Sure.
But it's like asking, and I know they're not related, but it's like asking Bronny James to be as good as LeBron. It's like asking Michael Jordan's kid to be as good as Michael Jordan. Like, it's not fair. If Kalen DeBoer accomplishes half of what Nick Saban did, the greatest college football coach of all time, that will be an incredible run. But when we go back to the standard, this is why I think DeBoer's got such, he's got a lot of gumption, is that typically in coaching, you don't want to take over for the guy. You want to take over for the guy that took over for the guy,
sure.
Right? So to me, it can do nothing but help Auburn. Now, that doesn't mean Alabama's going to be bad. All these people thought Alabama's going to fall off in recruiting. Alabama's a huge brand still, right? You still got some of that Nick Saban fairy dust sprinkled on there. And hell, Mike Schuler recruited well. Like, Alabama's always pretty much recruited well. But Nick Saban took it to another level. And now the expectation at Alabama, even though they didn't win a national championship in the last 3 years, is Soviet Union level of perfection. Either it's perfect or it's a disaster. And I will continue to say that I think Kalen DeBoer's tenure will be defined by the level of freakout the first time, like it always does, something inevitably goes wrong. Is that at Wisconsin? Is that against Georgia at home? Because the difference in DeBoer and Saban, outside of the obvious, is that whenever it went wrong for Nick Saban, like it did against Texas last year, the Alabama fans can point and say, you know what? Nick Saban's built up enough equity with us that I trust him to fix it. It's Nick Saban. Kalen DeBoer does not have that equity.
Yeah.
He has not proven it. So if they lose to Wisconsin, I mean, are they going to try and go burn the mayor's house down? Like, what's going to happen? Yeah. So, again, asking him to be Nick Saban isn't fair. And I guess if you follow that mathematical equation, it did make it easier for Auburn, but it still ain't easy.
Yeah, not easy at all. You mentioned every fan base has their lunatic friends, right? There were people firing Saban after the close win against USF here in Tampa.
Yeah, dude, my wife was one of them. She's from Tuscaloosa. Yeah, it's a Taylor Swift song over here.
Yeah, we're 35 minutes from the stadium, and I was like, "Oh man, I'd love to be down there if this ends up happening." So,
oh, dude, you want to talk about high class problems? It's amazing.
Oh yeah. All right, I've got a big one for you that we'll see how it goes. But before I ask you, where can people follow you? Where can they find your work? Where can they listen to your show?
Yeah, man, easy. Go to YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. If you watch, you listen. If you love college football, it's Crain and Company, CRAIN and Company. We're live 2 to 3:30 p.m. Central every weekday. We have live calls, a live chat. If you can't catch us live, it stays on until the meteor is going to hit us, I guess.
Who lasts longer at their current role between DeBoer and Freeze?
Who lasts longer? God, this is a tough one. Give me Hugh Freeze.
Yeah.
Give me Hugh Freeze.
Yeah,
I think he can get away with more.
I think I would agree with that. I think, again, like you said, you don't want to be there. Very rarely has it worked out with the guy following the guy. Like, I think I'd lean Hugh Freeze. I mean, nobody's going to be shocked if Kalen DeBoer just kind of keeps it rolling, but...
Yeah, well, Hugh Freeze can help himself out in that argument pretty quickly.
Yeah, you get a chance yearly to do so. So
and that's the game that matters the most. It's why Ryan Day's sitting up there nervous after winning 11 games a year right now.
Yeah, 1,100 games in a career, but just can't beat the one. So, all right, I asked Jake about conference realignment. We talked a ton about that. If you missed it, you can click on the screen right now to get caught up.